Marvel's Star Wars issue 108 is coming out on May 29th, and it's going to be the first new Legends comic in nearly 5 years. To celebrate Marvel's 80th anniversary, it's going to continue the original Marvel Star Wars comic series that ran from 1977 to 1986 and lasted 107 issues. My personal belief is that supporting this comic and making it a success could convince Disney, Lucasfilm, and Marvel that creating material that falls outside of the new canon, such as Legends, can still be profitable for them, and hopefully they would go on to produce more of it. I'm cautiously optimistic about issue 108. The author sounds like he actually cares about making a good comic. Because he grew up with the original Marvel Star Wars run, I would think that continuing this series must be a huge honor for him, so I assume he'll take his time with it. Yes, there is a chance this all could end up being a huge disaster, and this comic turns out to be the absolute worst thing ever produced. The plot might be confusing, it might needlessly contradict the EU, or worse, try to tie it into Disney's canon. This is where the caution part comes in my cautious optimism. However, I think all that is unlikely. Like I said, the writer, Matthew Rosenberg, has made a point of how important the original Marvel Star Wars was to him, so I don't believe he would half-ass it. This comic is just a one-shot, so it's probably not going to go out of its way to contradict the larger expanded universe, and it's a direct sequel to a storyline from the old Marvel comics. So if any references to other Star Wars stories are going to be made, it's going to be to that one. These are just my thoughts. On my Facebook page, Continue the Star Wars Legends Universe, I did a poll asking people who was going to buy it when it came out. 378 people voted in it, and you'd think on a big pro-EU continuation page, like 90% of the responders would say, yes, of course I'm going to get this. However, it was more like 2/3 of the vote said they would get it, and the rest said no, they weren't going to. How could such a thing happen? Thankfully, many people who participated in the poll explained why they voted a certain way in the comment section. The people who said they were going to get it generally had very similar responses. Some simply said, yeah, this comic is part of the EU, which is part of the Star Wars universe I follow, so of course I'm going to get it. Others made the point that supporting this comic could help convince Disney and Lucasfilm to release other new Legends projects in the future. But there were also people who felt differently. For example, someone said they weren't going to get it because money was tight for them. And if you are in the position that a $4 or $5 comic isn't really worth it when you're just trying to live paycheck to paycheck, then no, I don't expect you to bend over backwards just to support the expanded universe. But even he mentioned that he might pick it up at a cheap price on Amazon Prime, which is a pretty good idea. If you do want this comic and price is the main issue, then maybe consider doing that, or waiting for it to go on clearance or something. Eric Johnson writes that he is interested in it, but will flip through it before he buys it. This is a great idea, and honestly everyone should do this. I'm going to just in case my worst fears come to pass. If they do, and the comic is just utter trash, then I won't get it. But if I'm in the store and I read it, and I think it's a solid story, then I'm probably going to buy 20 copies or something, just because supporting new Legends material is that important to me. And while you guys don't have to do anything as extreme as that, I certainly won't discourage it. Star Wars Legends needs as much support as we can give it right now, and I'm hoping that most people who voted no on the poll are willing to adopt a wait-and-see approach. At the very least, give the comic a chance before you dismiss it. In fact, Joshua La Rosa, who said he was worried Disney would ruin it, said he was willing to wait and see what I had to say before disregarding it. John Enos writes he won't get it because it's pennies. He wants nothing less than KOTOR 3 or Jedi Knight 4. I can understand this comic not being on the top of EU fans' wish lists. I would have personally liked the Sword of the Jedi announcement more. But this announcement is something I am looking forward to, not just because I'm a fan of the comics, including the original Marvel Star Wars comics, but I also recognize the opportunity that has been presented to us Legends fans. We don't have the luxury to pick and choose what EU stories get made, sadly. All we can do is show Disney that Legends sell, no matter what it is. And hopefully they'll keep giving us more Legends stories in the future. And who knows, maybe one of those will be KOTOR 3, or Jedi Knight 4, or whatever else. but I don't think we can get to that point if a new Legends story comes out and it's a total flop. I get where you're coming from. If a new Legends book comes out and it's something that I have no interest in, let's say they make the Crystal Star 2, I wouldn't be jumping up and down in excitement either. But it is Legends, so I probably would still buy it to support Legends, and hopefully the story would be good. And then they make Sword of the Jedi because the Crystal Star 2 sold so well. For what it's worth, I would love Coder 3 and Jedi Knight 4. Let's work together to try to make that happen. Daniel Ray Ingalls writes that he won't buy issue 108 because he doesn't have the other 107. I think that's a fair critique. Imagine a casual reader coming into a comic book store and seeing Star Wars issue number 108. They probably would have the same response that Daniel did, and end up buying a new canon comic instead because it's an issue 1. My prediction is that issue 108 is largely going to be a love letter to the fans of the original Marvel run of comics. Not only is it going to be a sequel to an issue of the old comics, it's also going to include a whole bunch of characters that were introduced in that series. Jackson, Amazia Foxtrain, Valence the Hunter, and Dominant Tag. So it's more than likely they'll make a lot of callbacks to events involving them from the old storylines. And new readers, who might not have heard of these guys, could get a little confused as to who they are. On the other hand, I have a feeling that Matthew Rosenberg will probably understand that not everybody reading issue 108 will be familiar with these characters who were invented 40 years ago. I'm also going to assume that he's going to ease new readers into who these characters actually are. In the announcement article for issue 108, he did say he wanted to write a story that would appeal to both new and old readers, so I don't think he's going to assume that everyone reading will have encyclopedic knowledge of issues 1 through 107. Even if you didn't read those issues, you'll probably be able to follow along relatively well. Now that being said, if issue 8 is intimidating because you haven't read issues 1 through 107, you could go and read them before issue 108 comes out. You've got a couple of months to catch up. The cheapest and easiest way to collect the full series would be the 5 Dark Horse Omnibus volumes a long time ago. Used copies are pretty cheap on Amazon, and I'll even put links in the description for all of them. If you weren't aware of how readily available all those comics are, here's your chance to collect them and start reading. I know most people probably prefer the Dark Horse era comics, but I think too often the original Marvel Star Wars gets overlooked. It's better than people give credit, in my opinion. It's not perfect, but with over 100 issues, I'm sure there's something in there that you will really like. So, once again, to the people who voted no in the poll, I understand your hesitance. But if you're a hardcore fan of the EU, I don't think you have too much to worry about. And though it's not the EU story that many of us have been waiting for, I really do think supporting it could get us the EU stories we really have been wanting. Until more news comes out regarding issue 108, I think I've said everything I've felt about it. But I'm very curious to know what all your guys' thoughts on it are. Will you buy it? Avoid it? Wait and see if it's good? Will you buy more than one issue? Is this the best chance to get Legends continued? Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And have a great day.